Hi again, welcome back to what I am now calling the Lornaghast Codex, a show where I explain the lore of me and my friends' D&D world. For anybody tuning in on episode 2 rather than 1, you're a rebel, and I like you. Alright, class is in session, everybody calm down. Paul, please spit out that gum, and Walker, for the love of God, leave Clyde alone. Please open your textbooks to Chapter 2. As you may remember in the last episode, we talked about Lornaghast in terms of geography, its many landmarks and places of note. But today, we are going to shift gears and discuss the individual countries within Lornaghast, explore what life is like in each, and maybe get into everybody's favorite topic of discussion, their individual forms of government.
I'm not a big fan of the government. 30 on 30. I'm not a big fan of the government.
As an additional note, we're not going to cover these parts of the map as they are independent territories, which we will discuss at a later date. Okay, one more thing. On a more serious note, we're going to be talking a bit about fictional xenophobia and colonialism. If these things are something you have a hard time hearing about, I'll have timestamps to skip these topics when they come up. Okay, with that preamble out of the way, let's discuss the 5 major countries of Lornaghast that currently exist. First and foremost, we'll be taking a look at the Kingdom of Imuith, by far the oldest established country in Lornaghast, dating as far back as 500 AS. I will explain this date naming convention, but that'll come later. The Kingdom of Imuith was first established when elves from a far-off land by the name of Imuith, real creative, I know, invaded Lornaghast, spreading disease and violence in their wake. Before this invasion, Lornaghast mostly consisted of dwarves, birdfolk, tiefling, and of course, the orcs in the Badlands. When the elves came, they brought with them a general disdain for native races, which is still seen as one of the kingdom's biggest flaws. While at one point Imuith was the biggest superpower in Lornaghast, they are now a shadow of their former selves, occupying only the East?
East? I thought you said West.
The easternmost part of the landmass. In the modern day of our current D&D campaign, Imuith is essentially an electoral oligarchy, ruled by 9 elected officials. Most decisions are run through a council of dukes and is put to a vote. Imuith is currently at an age of peace and relative prosperity. It's still a country filled with racism and prejudice. Hell, most of its population is still elven, and even in the modern era, as of 1380 AS, only one non-elf has ever become a duke on the council, and even then, they were a half-elf. There are some politicians and citizens that hope to change this in the future, but as it currently stands in the world, this has yet to be seen. Up next, we have the dwarven city of Draco. This absolute unit of a city was founded 50 years after the Kingdom of Imuith invaded Lornaghast. Founded by Draco I, the city comprises mostly dwarven citizens. See, the dwarves of Lornaghast are crafty fuckers, and figured out how to trick the Imuith elves into leaving them alone. They essentially crafted machines to help them create a man-made landmass surrounding Lornaghast, and use it to create the foundations of a city. Once this was finished, they signed a peace treaty with the Imuith elves, granting them the rights to the land just off the coast of Lornaghast, as Imuith cartographers hadn't charted the new land. So, the dwarves effectively tricked the elves into giving them a fresh start. A little later, Imuith gave back this mountain range as a gesture of goodwill between nations. This was Draco's Ridge, like I mentioned in the last episode. That said, a lot of Draconians still harbor a huge grudge against the Imuith elves for this act, and many still view the elves as the root of all evil in Lornaghast. A few notable things about Draco is that the city itself has become a technological wonderland, developing rudimentary electricity, early audio recording, very early depictions of photography, the most advanced form of construction infrastructure Lornaghast has ever seen, and has even developed rapid-fire crossbows, which are essentially crossbow Gatling guns. The city is currently being run by Sheriff Graham Draco, the 5th ruler in Draco's history. Also, Draconian dwarves aren't Scottish, they have, Americanized southern accents. I have no idea why I made this decision. I think it was just because I was sick of doing Scottish accents in my campaigns, and I thought I'd nip that stereotype in the bud. So, yeah, they all talk like, yeehaw! Okay, pop quiz. Do you remember those islands I didn't really talk about in the last episode? Alright, we're going to talk about them now. So, these are the United Colonies of Xanthar. They're a series of island nations all operating in tandem. Each island is run by a democratically chosen governor who is tasked with overseeing that particular island's local government, laws, and regulations. The various governors meet in monthly committees where they make national decisions, such as how much government funding goes into programs, and stuff like that. Okay, I'll be honest with you. I understand that this is a very flawed system of government from a world-building standpoint, but to that, I'd like to offer 2 points. 1. This world would agree with you. The UCZ is filled with corrupt politicians, massive oversight, and is often accused for not listening to its people. Like, the country had a massive underground slave trading problem, and most governors were unaware at best and complicit at worst. The system is definitely broken, and Lornaghast is currently seeing one Governor Rosalind, the first female governor elected, by the way, steadily trying to shift the hierarchy of power in the UCZ. Number 2, I'm not a political expert, I just wanted to make the UCZ different than the rest of the countries. There's one more note about life in the colonies that I feel is worth bringing up. Despite having by far one of the greatest naval force in any country in Lornaghast, Xanathar has by far the worst case of pirate-itis. Piracy is a constant threat to the country's trade routes. Oh, and as a final note, flintlock weaponry was first developed in Xanathar. So yes, there are guns in this universe. Very basic, rudimentary guns, but guns nonetheless. Next, we have the Akmorton Empire, which let me start by addressing the obvious. Yes, it is based off the Roman Empire. I know, it's super original, but it's an important piece of the puzzle. Akmorton was founded in 1275 AS in order to push the Kingdom of Imwith's forces back. Eventually, the empire grew to become a major political powerhouse, claiming not only the land on the outskirts of Imwith's control, but pushing even further to the point where it now is the largest country on Lornaghast. Akmorton is considered the biggest military force on the continent and is practically dependent upon a war economy. Currently, the Akmorton Empire is at war with another country we haven't mentioned yet, which has caused countless lives to be lost and more destruction to be wrought across Lornaghast as a whole. The Akmorton Empire is currently ruled over by Emperor Armand Vulpes, a man that nobody has actually seen, and is a figure so mysterious that many people believe he might actually be the god of tyranny, Bane, himself. I could probably make a whole video on what life is like in the Akmorton Empire, but let's just go over a few very basic things. If you're an Akmorton citizen, you will serve your country for at least 2 years. Which doesn't sound so bad, but most cadets die in boot camp.
Ah! That's a war face! Now let me see your war face!
So the odds of you actually surviving those 2 years are incredibly slim. The good news is, life in the Empire itself is actually pretty chill. Like art and culture at large is incredible, with advancements in medicine that the rest of the world has yet to see. Disputes between the mortal races are surprisingly far and few compared to the rest of the continent. That said, it hasn't stopped one of my players from despising the Empire with all his being. Okay, I feel like I talked about the Empire for a really long time, but let's talk about our final country. Last, but certainly never least, is the Kingdom of Harrisburg. Harrisburg is interesting because it is the youngest of all the countries in Lornaghast. The kingdom only came to be after the Akmorton Empire sought to raid a pacifist city known as Harrisburg. One captain in the Akmorton Empire instead attempted to protect the city's inhabitants since they wouldn't defend themselves. This resulted in what was known as the Harrisburg Massacre. The captain, however, was able to gain support of people in the surrounding towns, villages, and cities, and raised a militia in order to drive back the empire. That captain would later be named King Simon Magus of the Kingdom of Harrisburg. What's unique about Harrisburg as a country is the fact that while the country has a king, he acts more like a president to the people. The people of Harrisburg appoint lords, ladies, nobles, and knights to join the king in the Council of 10, which oversees major political decisions in the country. It's not a perfect system, but for the time being, that's what Harrisburg has. And that's it in terms of countries in Lornaghast. There's still some geographical stuff that we could talk about in future episodes, stuff like towns, villages, things like that. But honestly, I'm getting kind of sick about talking about locations. We gotta spice things up. We gotta add in some paprika, a little bit of cayenne, Maybe throw some turmeric in there, I don't know. Will bugs figure out how to properly end a video? Will we learn more useless lore about a place that doesn't exist in both real life and within the attention of pop culture in general? Tune in next week to find out. Same bug time, same bug channel. Alright, that's good.